Facebook, YouTube, we back at it again. I stand the LLC. You got Coach Jay here, and we ready to have another conversation. We ready to have another conversation. Before we jump in, please hit like and share on Facebook. Please hit like, hit the notification bell over at YouTube. Like and share that. Please subscribe. Also we wanna before we get started, we wanna just talk about we got a lot of things going on in our world right now. We got a crisis going on in Ukraine, and so we wanna promote love, we want to promote healing, and we want to promote health from this platform. And so, when you got some free time in your meditation, in your prayer time, whatever you may call it, your Zen moment, just consider those who are a bit less fortunate. Consider those whose situation may not look like yours. Consider those who, may not be as privileged as you are, and just send some love their way. And I guarantee you, if you send love out, you're gonna get love back. And so I'm all about sending love out because I like love and I want to get love back. So whatever you are doing today, whatever you're gonna do tomorrow's Friday. I'm sure we've all worked hard all week. Man, send some love out. Call somebody you hadn't talked to in a while. Send some love their way. Send them a text message. Send an email. Go on your social media. Do some live and do some positive. I was listening to Club Shay with Shannon Sharp, and he had Dame Dash on there, and Dame was talking about the algorithm of the violence that is in the African American community and how entertainers are getting shot, getting killed, just about weekly, monthly. And he was like, it's an algorithm, it's the system that is producing this, and he said, we can shift the algorithm if we would make something positive go viral, like this conversation we're having today. If we would like and share this versus that other stuff, then we would shift the narrative. But it is evident that there's a certain narrative that plays on our psyche that we are attracted to as humans that we need to address within the core of ourselves. Like, why do you want to go look at a video about somebody hating on another human and subscribe and like and share that, and not come over here to a conversation like this where we're talking about something positive and not like and share this? So I guarantee you that this will not go viral because it's not entertaining enough. There's no harm enough in this conversation for it to go viral. So I want to challenge social media out there today. Let's make this conversation about the person that is sitting next to me on the screen and the experiences that he has had. Let's make this conversation go viral. Let's make this conversation be as meaningful as the person that can twerk or the person that can do all the dance moves. Nothing against them, because all of that great. We all got to do what we got to do, right? But for our standing LLC, this is what we want to lift up. So hey, make this conversation go viral. So let's jump right in it. Without further ado, I'm gonna ask a simple question to my guests here. Without further ado, I'm gonna ask a simple question. Who do I have with me today as my guest on I Stand the LLC? Who are you? I think we lost him. Give me 1 second, y'all. We got to get back at it. Technical difficulties. See, we start talking about the algorithm, and then boom, 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 everything goes dark. One second. We ain't gonna let this little bit of delay impact what we got going on over here. I think he got a phone call and was trying to disconnect it and ended up logging out. But we're gonna have a conversation. Akivia Hardison, thank you for tuning in. please hit like and share. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you being here with us. I hope y'all week has been blessed. I hope that I hope that you got some great plans for yourself coming up this weekend. Make sure you celebrate yourself. Make sure you take time to put yourself first. Um, as I say, put yourself on your own agenda. You know, sometimes with our agendas, we can put everybody else on them, but we fail to put our own selves on our agenda. Um, so make sure you put yourself on your agenda. One second, guys. All right, he's working to come back in. Working to come back in. Number of little technical difficulties. As you know, they got this viral thing going on TikTok. But about the, you keep on rolling, one monkey don't stop no show. Listen, we ain't gonna let one little hiccup stop what it is that we're trying to do over here. So I ask that you be patient, and it's all gonna work on out. It's all gonna work on out.
I apologize.
I want you to text me the number of that person that called you.
Right.
With them.
Right.
They almost said that I'm a calm person, but they almost triggered me. They like to trigger me. They really did. But anyway, back to the schedule.
Yes.
Let's get into it. So again, I'm gonna ask you the question. Share with the viewers out there. Tell them, who is it that I have with me on today as we have the conversation about someone who has lived experience in foster care. And when I say lived experience, I'm talking about not something that they read about,
Yeah,
not something that they heard about, not something that they seen, but something that they experienced firsthand. Tell me who I have the privilege of having with me today.
great. My name is Kevin Woods. I come from a family of 15. My mother was a triplet. And at the early age of 3, I was displaced from my mother and put in the foster care system, a system that I would later go on to be in for 16 years. And so one of the things that I would say is I grew up, basically the foster care system raised me, from foster care homes to group homes. And so what you have before you is someone who saw the ins and out of the foster care system, but also the residential system. So I can talk from being in a foster care placement, but also a group home placement. And so, which are totally two different things. You experience totally different things in each one. So what you have before you is a grown man now, but someone who was a kid who grew up in the system and went through highs, lows, struggles, saw a lot, experienced a lot, and it actually changed how I viewed people, changed how I viewed the family structure. It changed how I viewed myself.
All right. Now, when I do this right here, because I'm a coach, we got to call a timeout right there because you're getting ahead of yourself. We got to call a timeout because we got to call a play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you come from a family of 15 and that your mom was a triplet.
Yes.
Okay? Let's pause right there for a moment because, family for one person may be different to another person.
Right.
And so we have to have an open mind when we say family, because when I say family, it may mean my blood, my biological. But when somebody who has experience like you and you say family, it may be the people that you live with in the foster home that became your family. It may be the young men and women that you met in the residential placements that are now your family. It may be some of the staff that you met along the way, the placement workers along the way that are now your family. And when you say family, that look different from the way it looks when I say family. So I want to lift that up and let people have some context and some understanding, because this conversation is deeper than just surface level. Right. Now, how is it that you are able to remember that you come from a large family of 15 and your mom was a triplet if you were displaced at an early age? Tell me about that, because in my mind, it would signify that it's still something there about family to you if you were able to still connect that. So can you tell me about your family lineage and what you know about your family lineage, like your birth family lineage, and what that means to you?
Definitely. Well, family means everything. I can remember as early, like I said, I was displaced at 3, but I have memories of my biological family. We were very poor. We didn't have anything. Sometimes there wasn't no running water. Sometimes I remember sneaking and getting bread off the top of the refrigerator. When I could walk, I would climb on chairs just because I was hungry. And there was this bread, it was called Wonder Bread. And to me, it was very sweet. And so I remember balling it up and stuffing my mouth with it just to have something to eat. And so although we were poor, we had love. We loved each other. I remember my sisters going to war for us, because with a family that large, my mother was a very spiritual woman. So we went to church. And so I remember when we would come, we would take up a whole two pews by ourselves. Wow. And I remember that was her thing. It was church or nothing else. But there was a lot of, my mother was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so there were moments where she was about God. And then there were moments that it was very gory. And so there was a lot that happened. We were on the news. A lot happened. And so as early as I can remember, I remember being in the foster care system when I was taken at 3, but they would always try to connect us and have us, meeting. And so because the story was so big, what happened is one of the foster mothers that my sister had was friends with my foster mother. Okay. And so they made sure that we got to see each other.
Good. Let me take a time out right there. Mm-hmm. Because I want to, we got to speak to the system as well as lift up your story and your example, because many may have experienced the same thing. Many may be unaware. But one of the primary objectives of the system at large, the social service system, it's all about permanency. It's all about keeping young people with their families. And of course, some systems have done a great job at that, and systems have not done a great job at that. And we're aware of that. But it's important for young people to have that connection to their family, especially at a young age. I'm sure you got to the age to where you were able to make a choice, right? Okay, maybe I do, maybe I don't. And you mentioned that your mom had what some may know as a mental health diagnosis of schizophrenia, right? Mm-hmm. How did that show up in your life as you got older and you began to navigate the nuances of the foster care system?
Okay. And just to be totally transparent with you, at 3 years old, and we're talking about 3, 5, I was potty trained the whole 9. But I was a frequent bedwetter. I wet the bed. I had episodes where I would just cry. I longed for my mother. So just to give you the backdrop, when I was taken at 3, they told me, the foster care system came, the police came. I remember the flashing lights. They came and they took us to a home in Hope Mills, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we were at the foster home. And all night, I remember it was me and my little brother. And a lot of us, because it was such a big family, they split us up in 2s and 3s. But it was just me and my little brother. And so in this home, me and him were in the same bed, and we were crying for our mother. And so we just kept crying the whole night. And I remember the foster mother that I was in her care at that time came in the room, and she said, if y'all just stop crying, y'all will see her tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. Yeah. And so we kept looking to see our mother. We love to eat. So here we have this nice foster home, plenty of food. And so gradually, I never stopped longing for my mother. And notice I said my mother, my father wasn't there. So it was my mother that I remembered. And so I never stopped longing for her. But as the foster care home that I was in at that time began to take care of me, I started letting my guard down. And so some of the things that I dealt with, okay, I like this family. It's cool, but I have a real family. And so I didn't want to give them too much of Kevin. So, because I always thought I was going to go home one day.
Right. So let me ask you this question right here, because you mentioned that the foster parent said, "Hey, if you only stop crying, you'll get to go home tomorrow." And maybe that's the information that she had. Maybe she didn't know any better. Maybe she just wanted the crying to stop. And you mentioned longing for your mother, and you mentioned that your mother was spiritual. Some days were great days, and some days were not so great days. And so, in that split, now that you can reflect back to 3, knowing that you were split from your mother and still long for that, what does that look like for Kevin today? That if we would look at that as a pipeline, like the longing from the time you were split up until where you are in life now, how long did that longing last before you were able to deal with it, or have you dealt with it?
Well, that was something that I never fully dealt with because, like I said, I'm just giving you broken versions. But even in school, I would write down my mother's name. I would write down all 15 of my siblings' name on a piece of paper. And I would say, I'm going to see them one day. I want to see my sister. So reconnecting with my family was big for me. And so, again, it wasn't years later until that total, because you got to remember, with 15 kids, there were 2 sets. So the first set left first, but we were still there. And so when she didn't get her act together, they came and got the younger set, which was me, my brother, my little sister, and a couple of my sisters. And so, but family has always meant everything to me. To answer your question, God rest her soul, but I did not come to grips with everything as it pertains to my mother until she passed away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That must have been very difficult.
It was. I actually, to be honest with you, I was very close to my mom. I didn't meet my mother till I was 13. And I know we're just everywhere, but I want to let you know this. I ran away from a group home. I was in Durham, North Carolina, and I ran away from a group home in the night. I stuffed my bed to make it look like I was still laying in the bed. And I had learned the system of the group home. I knew after a certain time they wasn't coming to check on the room or checking to make sure I was in the bed. So I knew that they wouldn't know I was gone until the next day, when I didn't come down for breakfast, and I didn't go to and come down to breakfast, and they say, "Hey, Kevin didn't come down." But so what I did, I called a cab. I was working at Fazoli's, and I saved my money, called a cab. I slept at the bus station because the bus did not leave to the next day. So I'm looking over my shoulder, and finally, I don't know how I got the bus ticket. I can't remember that. But I can remember they gave me a bus ticket to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I went to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and actually I had got a letter from my sister, William Clark Road in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that's where my sister was living. So I was thinking I'm going to see my sister. And it was around Martin Luther King's Day. And if you remember back in the day, on Martin Luther King's Day, you could ride the bus for 10 cents.
Wow.
So what I did is I got on the city bus, and I said, I need to go to William Clark Road. They told me what bus I need to go on. And so when I get to William Clark Road, it was a 1-bedroom apartment. I walk in there, and there's a lady laying on the couch who was my mother. And when I walked in the door, she looks up. She said, "You're my son, Kevin."
Wow.
Mind you, I'm taking at 3. So 10 years later, I'm like, this woman knows who I am. She was set up on the couch. She was so happy. But the William Clark Road was a 1-bedroom roach-infested apartment. Wow. I went from living in a group home where they made sure I ate, where I didn't have to worry about roaches. But because I love my family so much, the roaches didn't matter to me, because I had my mom and my sister.
Let's take a time out right there, because we got to unpack that. And this is important to professionals that will watch this video. And that's why I kind of went this way, because it's so much in this story. For professionals that will watch this video, for business owners that will watch this video, the power of love is what the power of love is. You may look at this situation and say, well, Kevin, you was at a place that was feeding you, just like Kevin just stated.
Yeah.
They were feeding you, Kevin. You didn't have to worry about this. You didn't have to worry about that. But Even at 3, his mama birthed him out of her womb. The love, the connection was there. It didn't matter to Kevin what the system said about his mom. And it shouldn't matter so much to us once Kevin is safe.
Absolutely.
We should do all that we can as a people, as a system, to try to make families stronger, whatever that looks like and whatever the need is, so that young people can get back home or at least get close to it. And that's why the system offers relative placements, kinship placements, to try to keep young people with their family, because this is what happens. What happens is just what Kevin did. Young people run away because my lens is, baby, why you go back there? It's so volatile, it's so dangerous, it's so negative. To that young person, that's their family. Yeah. And we should never forget that. We cannot be biased. We cannot be prejudiced in how we feel about what family should look like, but we have to hear the young person out. And I'm sure if somebody at 10, from 3 to 10, would have sat Kevin down and said, hey, Kevin, what is it that you want at this moment? And listen to Kevin and listen to Kevin's heart, I'm sure they would have said, hey, you know what? Maybe mom is still working on some things, but let's make sure that we can get you a visit to mom, a face-to-face visit. And instead of you having to run away, Kevin, and put your life in jeopardy, we're going to take you. We're going to put you in a vehicle, and we're going to take you to mom so that you can see your birth mother, so that you can love her, so that you can show her that you're alive and that you are thriving in life. And you can hug on her all you want, Kevin. You can kiss her all you want, Kevin, because this is your mom. And just because the system don't feel as though mom is doing what she's doing. And I'm not saying mama did right or wrong. I wasn't there. But what I do know is that you have a right to love your mom, and your mom has a right to love you no matter what is going on in and around your life. Now, let's take a step back. You spent 16 years in the system. Yeah. Talk to me about some of the highs that you experienced in the system. We're going to talk about the lows, but I want to talk about the highs that you experienced in the system, because evidently you may have escaped what the system feel like you should have escaped by being removed from your mom's home. So tell me about the highs that you experienced being in the system for 16 years.
One of the highs and the benefits of the system was the poverty mindset, you know, scraping and looking how I'm going to eat. I remember like when we would eat, it's funny to me because I would try to eat so fast because I was so used to, if you got 15 brothers and sisters, you know, there might not be no seconds. Right. And so she would always tell me, Kevin, you don't have to do that. If you want more, there's more. There's plenty. Eat all you want. Eat till your belly get full. So the high was I learned how to, you know, to know that there was food and that is normal. One of the things that I thought it was normal not to have food. I thought it was normal just to eat bread. I thought it was normal to open a can of Viennas and eat that, and that's it. That's all you get for the day. I thought that was normal. I didn't know what breakfast, lunch, and dinner was. I didn't know that you get a snack in between the day. So when I was in foster care, in the foster home, I was so excited when they was like, hey, it's lunchtime. I don't like watermelon to this day, but we ate a lot of watermelon growing up. And I didn't know that, you know, we go outside, eat watermelon, play. So playing was not something that was normal. Being, you know, having a conversation with friends. So some of the highs was it coming out of what I was in, there was protection. I didn't know what it was like to be protected. You know what I'm saying? And so there was a locked door. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have to worry about, you know, dealing with living in the projects and dealing with the stuff that comes along with that. Right. And so I had a nice foster home. I could wash, take a shower. I didn't know what it was like to just the upkeep of life, just being personal purity, you know, knowing what it's like to take a shower and wash and put deodorant on. Yeah. So that's what taught me that. I didn't know what it was like to have my own bed, you know, because sometimes we slept on the floor. I can remember when I was with my mother, there was maybe 5 or 6 of us in a queen size bed. We all slept in the same bed. I didn't know what it was like to have my own bed.
We got to pause right there, man, because, you know, when I listen to that, you here as an adult now talking about it wasn't normal to have leftovers.
Right.
It wasn't normal to play.
No.
It wasn't normal to feel safe. And for so many people who wonder, like, when they judge people and they look at a certain type of individual and they like, why they like that? Why they like that? Why they like that? Here is a young man, an adult now, in his same mind, reflecting back and telling an audience of people that will watch this, that in America, the United States of America, not a foreign country, not a third world country,
Right.
that when he was growing up, he didn't know it wasn't normal to have leftovers. It wasn't normal to be able to take a bath. It wasn't normal to be able to sleep without 5 or 6 people in the bed. It wasn't normal to sleep in a bed.
Mm-hmm.
And because that was his norm and it's not our norm, it doesn't make it all bad.
Right.
Because he was able to get exposed to something different. And we have to be careful not to write people off because of what they view as a norm is different from our norm. As an individual, I have norms. But when I go into work, I have to sit my norms at the door and not judge people by the norms that I have and look down at Kevin and be like, oh my God, Kevin, you don't know what it is to sleep in a bed?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because for Kevin, it was normal to not sleep in the bed. And it wasn't, for him, it wasn't anything wrong with that because that's what he knew.
Right.
That's what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, these exposure gaps and being exposed to different things. And I always try to get parents to take their children on field trips and just expose them to so many things that they may not have privy to day to day. But we can all save up for a great summer trip to expose ourselves and even our kids to something greater so we can all dream bigger. I'm sure when you went from sleeping on the floor to having your own bed, it may have caused you to dream bigger. How did that impact you? How did you then look at your life you came from because of where you were at? Did that change the way you looked at the life you came from?
It did. One of the things was, and like I said, I laugh about it because when I think back about it, me and my little brother were put in the same foster home. And so we still had the mind, although we had our own bed, we had bunk beds, but we would constantly get in trouble because when Jay would come in to wake us up, you would see you would see my little brother in my bed, or I would be in his bed. They like, why do y'all do that? Y'all have your own bed. But that's what we learned. And so it was a comfort mechanism. We would sleep in the same bed. And again, I told you I used to wet the bed. So we still did that. That was the love we had. Yeah. And, I later grew out of that, but it was an experience. So having my own bed, even though it was my own, we still slept in each other's bed. That's just what we knew, and again, as I got older, of course, we shifted from that. But for a long time, we would sleep in each other's bed regardless.
All right. Now we talked about some of the positive things. Mm-hmm. And so now I want to talk about some of the positive people. And we got Nathan has a question. We're gonna lift your question up here in a second. But just like you just shared some of the positive things about being in foster care, talk to me about some of the positive people that impacted you along the way.
Okay. My first foster home, I have nothing negative to say about. She passed away, but she used to always, we didn't call her mother mommy. We say mommy till later on because I had a mom. And I remember the first time that I said mom, it shocked me because I was like, oh my God, I got a real mom, but I'm calling this lady mom. And so we started calling her mom, and she would say, be good for mommy. As we started going to school, she would say, be good for mommy. But she loved us. She knew our story and knew what we went through. But what happened is she ended up going back to work because she was a foster mother. And so when she went back to work, she wanted to go back to work with kids in the daycare. And so we actually ended up going to another foster home. But this foster home, the first foster home, she was a great woman. Christmases were dope. We got whatever we wanted. I remember they had a fireplace. They taught me how to cut wood. And if you live in Fayetteville, we don't have leaves. We rake pine straw. Yeah. So I learned to rake pine straw and pine cones. and we would jump in the pine straw, being kids, and again, like I said, we didn't play with my mom, but when we got into a foster home, it was okay to play.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember just her learning. She really loved us, and she loved us like we were her own. And she was married. He passed away as well, and he was a good man. They really took care of us. But again, as we begin to transition into other foster homes, that's when we begin to see that not all foster homes are alike.
Yeah, all foster homes are not created equal, and I'm a big advocate for screening homes and putting systems in place to try to identify the best people possible. But it leads us to another topic. It's like we have a real humanity crisis, right? Because the homes that turns out inflicting more trauma on young people. Those people in those homes are human. They have human issues, trauma that causes them to do things that are unimaginable, unthinkable to young people who are already struggling. And there's no excuse for that. And that's why we have to look at it from a broad scope and not just the system, but we have to also look at humanity as a whole to see what it is that we can do to cause people to love more, to dig deeper and look within themselves to resolve whatever issues that are showing up in their life, so we can all be the best version of ourselves, so we can offer something great to the world. Because if I can't offer anything great to the world, I can't offer anything great to Kevin. And so I'm sure you've had some of the experience. But it's amazing, man, to see the way that you lit up when you were talking about that first placement. And so I'm sure that the bad moments didn't wash out the good moments that you had in care. So, of course, we're doing the sandwich techniques. We talk about some positive, put a little bit of negative in the middle, and then we talk about more positive. That's what they call the sandwich technique. So, kind of tell us about some of them points in the system and in care that were not so pretty, that were not so lending to growth and positive development, that may have had the reverse impact on you, that lended itself to not greater outcomes as you would have liked.
Right.
And you don't have to call any names or anything.
Yeah, definitely. I remember a situation. I was in this home, and it was my first encounter with something sexual. Didn't know what it was. I was a kid, probably 7, 8. But this young girl was older than me. She was actually a part of the foster's family. It was their real, family. And I remember her touching my private parts. And so I began to think that, okay, what is this? And after she kept doing it, it was like, okay, she must love me or something, because this is what she does in the night out. And so I never said anything about it. But keep in mind, as a foster child, when you do realize it's wrong and you speak out about it, you're already said that you're crazy or you're a liar. And so people that said that, you're already set up for people not to believe your story. And so I really was hush-hush about it. So I'm going to pin that there. So I was molested while I was in the foster care system. But also, I remember one Christmas, back in the day, they used to have these shirts. They were called God Body shirts. I don't know if you remember them. But what kids were doing, everybody was wanting their name on their shirts. And so for that Christmas, I wanted the God Body shirt and a Super Nintendo. And my social worker made sure I got the Super Nintendo and the God Body shirt. And how I know that this actually happened, because I'm going to tell you what happened. So the gifts came, and they had children there that were their biological kids. So I'm opening my gifts, and I'm like, my social worker told me, okay, you're going to get your Super Nintendo. I'm looking, no Super Nintendo. But her son opened it up, and he got it. And how I knew that this really happened, because the second part is going to tie it all together. So the God Body shirt came. He got it. But what made it real is I asked for my name to be on it. So he said, "Ma, this ain't mine." She said, "How you know that?" He turns it around. He said, "It got Kevin's name on it." And so I knew. So that would happen. Sometimes the gifts that were for us would go to their real kids.
Wow. Hold on. Let's stop right there and just. So of course, that's all wrong. That's all bad. But from an emotional standpoint, how did that make you feel? Number one, and were you given the opportunity to speak with your caseworker about it?
I was furious. I was angry. But you got to remember, this particular home thrived off of fear. They thrived off of, if you tell her anything, we're going to whoop you. And so I wouldn't say anything, because I didn't want to get a whooping. I didn't want to be beat. And also in the foster care system, that was one thing that you were not supposed to do. You were not supposed to hit a foster child.
Right.
So we were beat, and because of, I didn't want to be separated from my little brother, or, I just didn't want to cause any trouble. And so I wouldn't say anything. Another thing is, again, I was a bedwater. So while I was going to school, it was embarrassing, to wet the bed. I didn't want to do it. And I remember being called a piss pot. I remember being just really just harsh words, because you're so nasty. How dare you? You're lazy. But there was something going on with me because of the trauma of being stripped from my mother that I was dealing with, that in the night hour, my body wouldn't tell me to get up.
Yeah.
And so those were some of the lows. Like I was called all kind of names. Then I remember this story. We can move forward. One of the things I was told, I had friends. I mean, when I was in school, I was a very cool kid. And so she said one time, she said, "You keep on peeing in the bed, I'm going to take your sheets and put them on the clothesline so all your friends can see it."
Wow. That's a very low moment and a very sad moment, because no adult should demean a child in that manner. And just, so everybody listening understand, these facilities, these places that Kevin is speaking of, are been shut down years ago. And so we don't condone any of the violence, any of the pain and trauma that he suffered at the hand of adults who should have been caring for him. We're sharing this story to lift up the need for good people to be a representation of what the system really needs and what the system really wants.
Yes.
And so this is about bringing awareness. This is about giving people an understanding of what has going on and what could be potentially going on in places that we don't know about. And so as an adult, we should all have a responsibility in a regard to keep our young people safe. Because what if a neighbor, what if somebody would have just talked to Kevin, pulled Kevin to the side and just checked in with him? How you doing, man? How's it going? And like he said, just listen to him. So that rap of, man, they tell lies.
Mm-hmm.
That should never be in our community when it comes to young people. We should hear them out at all costs, because that's how we can combat human trafficking. That's how we can combat bullying. That's how we can combat a lot of different things, if we would hear our young kids out and allow them to speak. Them speaking and them having an opinion is not them being sassy. It's not them talking back. Let them share, because the more they share, the more you'll have their ear, the more you'll be their ear to listen, and you can pick up on something before it happens. Now, Lotla got a question in the chat, and also Sharonica, I'm going to get to you as well. Lotla said, what were some of the long-term difficulties of life, or long-term impacts in your life that followed you into adulthood because of some experiences that you had in foster care?
Well, some of the long-term difficulties, one is I wasn't given the chance to be a kid, because I always had to, it was like a survival mode. I had to put on sometimes. I remember they used to do foster care visits. So when the social worker was there, I was always like this. I was always looking at my foster parents like, can I say this? Because I knew that if I said the wrong thing, that when they left, I had hell to pay. And so I learned to keep a wall up. I wouldn't let people in, because I knew that if they got close to me, I would have to tell my secret. And so just being in the wrong hands caused me to shut down. one of the things I would do when I would be allowed to go on visits with my biological sisters and brothers, they would be around me, but I could not be their little brother because I was so fearful to say something that they may tell the foster care system. And then they say, well, Kevin said this to his sister. So I wasn't able to really be Kevin.
Right.
I always had to be on guard. I had to always have the hush mouth. And so that's some of the difficulties. Also, you know, I knew that they preferred their real children over me, and that hurt. I mean, that was something that really, really hurt, to know that I always felt like I was less than, you know. And then I said, long term, I thought that for a long time, I thought that if you were kissing me or if you were touching me inappropriately, that meant you loved me. So when it wasn't happening, I wondered, okay, am I doing something wrong because they didn't want to touch me, you know? And so I thought that a sexual touch or a gesture was saying that I approve of you and we want you and stay here. And so a lot of times, certain things were I allowed that I didn't like because I wanted to be accepted.
Yeah, you know, and that's so true, Kevin. Not only for young people in foster homes, but also young people who suffer that sort of violence by their own family. Young people who have those experiences so early is that they long for that. They connect with that, and you wonder, like, well, baby, why would you put yourself in that situation? Or young man, why would you put yourself in that situation? But it's like you were trained alone for that.
Yeah.
Because you had no understanding of it. You were taught the wrong way. You were educated the wrong way.
Right.
And so that's what you have to go by. That's the measurement tool that you have to go by. And so let me share some with Sharonica. Sharonica, absolutely. Your question is, or your statement is that I have thought about being a foster parent to show love to someone that doesn't have it. Absolutely. If you got love in your heart and you want to be in it for the right reason, then you should stand tall. But this is what I would say to you, and I've said this throughout the years. Don't look at it as being a foster parent.
Right.
Look at it as being a parent in a family. Because if you look at it as I'm only a foster,
Yeah.
I'm only stepping in, then you're going to offer step in love. You're going to offer step in services. And that's not what the young person need. The young persons need a family. They need parents that love them.
If I may, I want to say this. That's big because when we would be around the real kids that they birthed, they would say this. So when the family reunion would come, these are our foster kids. That would burn us up. Any foster kid, and if you're watching, you can be like, I know he's talking real. We could not stand for you to put foster in front of. Just say we're your kids.
Yeah.
They don't have to know that we're foster. And
Right.
when they would say foster kid, it's like, because that denotes they're not really ours. So we didn't like to say foster kids.
Yeah, and Shamarco, thank you for your comment. And y'all, please hit like and share. We want to get this video out and make it go viral. We want to get this live out and make it go viral. Shamarco said he was a parent for about 4 years. Man, I would love for you to come on and just share what made you do that and why you were so passionate about doing that. To just give some people some insight into that, man. So thank you for standing tall and being a foster parent. And helping be a parent to somebody who had a need, because young people are not in these situations just because they wanted to show up. They're in these situations because there's a need, and we should meet their needs. Tamara Evans says, my grandmother was a foster mother and adopted her son and my uncle. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. So she was more than a foster mother. She was a mother, because mothers adopt, parents adopt, foster parents typically they don't adopt. They just, they help young people get to where they need to go, and then they transition, because we need them all. We need foster parents and we need people who stand tall and adopt. We need you all. We need everyone to stand tall and have a vested interest in the outcomes for our children. Not just your nieces and your nephews, but all children. We need to become communities again. We need to have invested interest in our junior highs, our middle schools, and our high schools to really show up the right way, change our mentor strategies, and not try to be the big the big guy that go talk about what you used to do, but have conversations with these young people and partner with them and show them that you're not there to project your lifestyle on them, but you're there to help them navigate the life that they have to live. Because Kevin is the one that had to live that life, not his social worker. Right. His social worker went home in the afternoon. Kevin had to live that life. And so what we want to do is have young people to have the tools and the skills and the abilities to navigate the life that they have to live and that they choose to live. So Kevin, again, thank you for that. But let me ask you this right here. Back to kind of the question that Lockley was saying, you know, how traumatic was that on your self-esteem to be called a foster kid, a bedwetter, you this, you that? And how did it impact your self-esteem, self-worth? And did it ever change?
Yeah, well, I was very, I had very low self-esteem. Although, you know, I was a very popular dude, I carried a secret. I was a bedwetter. I was a foster child. I can remember being in a classroom and I was livid. I was in this classroom and, you know, I was showing out. And my teacher said this. She said, if you don't stop, I'm going to call your foster mother. And when she said that, the whole class looked at me because some of them didn't know that I was a child. So when she said that, I turned the desk over, everything. And so they sent me to the principal office and they asked why. I said, because she said that she was going to call my foster mother. And I said, the fact that she said foster made everybody, because when you say foster anything, oh, he must have been a bad kid or his parents didn't want him. But that wasn't the case. My mother suffered mental illness. It wasn't that I was a bad child. It was just that because she had issues, I was displaced.
All right, let's time out right there. Because see, that's another nugget right there. You just said something. Did y'all hear what Kevin just said? Kevin just said he did not enter foster care because he was a bad child. Right. His mother had situations and circumstances that deemed her, whatever the state measured it by, that she could not adequately take care of Kevin.
Right.
And so to label anybody, not just a foster child, but to label and prejudge anybody based on their situation and circumstances is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Right.
Is that, but Kevin, because Kevin just told her, he said, man, I wasn't a bad child. You understand what I'm saying? Look at him. You know, he may have learned some things along the way, but Kevin just told us. And like, I can imagine being a worker and hearing Kevin saying he's not a bad child and having, you know, judgment in my heart about his situation. I could imagine how I would just throw that out and be like, well, okay. Yeah. So you say, right? And so that's why we have to leave judgment at the door and we have to look at the individual and have a heart for people and be advocates for change. Because if you can do that, then you can help people along the way see themselves march into different situations and have different outcomes in life. Now, did that ever change for you in terms of your self-esteem and self-worth?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When did all of that become a strength?
I'll tell you when that changed, but let me say this. I want to let the viewers know. Later on, I found out that my mother's rights was terminated. So when they terminate a parent's right, there's no going back. So that wasn't even an option for me. So my only option was adoption, which I later did. We'll talk about that at another time. But it changed for me. I had teachers who were like family. You stated back a while ago, you said what family looks like to you. I got teachers that I consider family. I got preachers I consider family. I got people that were part of my world that where they might have been a staff, but to me, that's pops, or to me, that's this person or that person. So family is people who understood my situation and understood my trauma and helped me through it. That's family. I have a brother. He's closer to me than some of my real family. Ryan Moore, one of my dopest friends. We brothers. Like he came down and for example, the baby shower. He just had a baby. I was there. I'm Uncle Kev. We're not by blood, but by love. That's my brother. Yeah. But it changed for me. I started writing. I had a 7th grade teacher, and at that time, she was my English teacher, and she noticed that I wouldn't do the homework assignments. At that time it was haiku, poetry, and so I thought poetry was for punks. I'm like, I'm not writing no poetry, man. You got me messed up. So one day she was smarter than I was at the time. So she said, Kevin, I tell you what, go home and I want you to write me a poem. She said, just one. She said, just write me one. You don't have to worry about the assignments. I said, oh, that's a cool deal. So what I did is I wrote a poem, and it was called Tender Kisses. And I submitted it to her, and she reads the poem, and she said she cried. She said, you didn't write that. I said, yes, I did. She said, come on, we didn't have Google at that time. So, it was Encyclopedia Britannica and things of that nature. But she didn't believe I wrote it. So again, she was smarter than me. She said, okay, write me another one then if you wrote that. So right there in class, I was like, you ain't saying nothing. 15 minutes, boom. Because my experience was my experience. Right. And so I began to write about how I longed for my family, and how one day when I would see them, and how, I just gave this whole fantasy, and it became very poetic. And she entered me into contests, which I later won. And then I found a love for writing. And so my self-esteem came up. And so what started happening, the kids started seeing I could write. So when Valentine's Day came, I wrote all the letters for my friends. Wow. I wrote all of their cards to their girls. They're like, yo, Kev, spit something real quick. I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And so I started becoming popular. So in 7th grade, I never forget it. I was at Holmes Middle School in Eden, North Carolina. In 7th grade, people were asking for my autograph.
Wow. Listen, let's stop right there, because I want to bring Shamarko on to talk about what drove him to go into foster parenting. But what I want to say, Kevin, to you is that what a great story at how you turn what could be pain into treasure. Definitely. You draw strength from your situation. And a lot of times we talk about how resilient young people are that go through situations like that. And young people are resilient. They shouldn't have to go through stuff like that to be resilient. But what we realize is that a lot of young people draw strength from those situations, and they adapt to some of the most horrific things. That's why punishments are kind of iffy, because you could take everything away from the child. They'll adapt to being in the room with them. And so today we got to have a different strategy, because you take everything, they just adapt to it. They'll just sit there and throw a ball on the wall and go somewhere in their mind and be okay with that until you take them off with punishment, and they don't learn anything from that. Right. And so, man, thank you for drawing strength from that situation. And we're almost hitting the hour. We're definitely going to have to do a part 2. But Shamarko, if you can hear me, what I want to ask you is, now we talked about Kevin having lived experience in foster care, meaning he experienced it firsthand. And now we have somebody on here with us who have lived experience as being a foster parent and being a parent. And I've seen him walk through that, being a parent to a young adult. But I want you to talk to us, Shamarko, about the what and the why behind you stepping into that arena and wanting to open your home up to be a parent to somebody that was in need, a young person in need.
Cool. Firstly, good evening, Josh and my little brother. How you doing, man?
What's up, Doc? How you feeling?
I'm good. I can't be alone because my phone's about to die, and I'm in the hallway of somebody else's place, so I'm trying to be real quick. But I have a heart for people. I have a heart for children. Anybody that knows me knows this. I remember growing up, and my aunt had a foster child. And she would bring her over to the house, and I remember she was a beautiful girl. I remember when she would come with my aunt, how well she would be. And sometimes I remember when the family would drop her back off, and her hair would be all dirty, and I could just tell. I remember looking at her eyes and seeing how sad she was. At a young age, I was still able to see a lot of things that a lot of people couldn't see. So I remember looking at her eyes and seeing how sad she was in her eyes. And I remember that locked in my head. When I got older, I remember hearing about foster care. I said, oh, Valerie was a foster child. And so I'm like, I want to make a difference in some lives. I feel like I was a good guy. I feel like my background, where I come from, me and my wife at the time, had a lot to offer. And even at this point, I've always thought about adopting a child. It's not because I am in need of a child. I want to see a life changed.
Wow.
Awesome.
And I always wanted to be a part in making someone better. And so, and I targeted, I was the one that people was like, why are you getting a grown kid or a teenager? But that's what I wanted. I wanted those that was thrown away, those that when they go to school, teachers didn't like. I wanted the bad ones.
Yeah.
And I end up getting them. I got teenagers, high school kids, and people were like, "Why don't you get a baby?" No, I mean, leave the babies for the older people who can't deal with the trauma. I wanted the rough kids that they could say, "This person threw me down, that person put me away, but Shamarko Bryant, Mr. Bryant, stood up for me. He changed my life." And so that was my main reason for wanting to go into foster care. And I was there for 4 years. What got me out of foster care was, I guess I was heartbroken. Looking at the system and how the system failed my last child, my last placement.
Yeah.
And they somewhat was saying, because, okay, the last child I had was a 16-year-old white female. She had been in about 7 to 8 foster homes within a year. She got to our home and was solid.
Yeah.
She stayed. She loved us. She didn't want to leave. And because she loved us so much, make a long story short, the foster agency I was with was wondering why this girl who have sabotaged every home she's been in. She has tore up people's houses. She has done this and done that. Why she like you all of a sudden?
Yeah.
At the time, my wife Latrice was working a lot, so I was able to get off work. My job was stable. I got off work at 2:30, 3 o'clock every day. So I was the one who took my foster child to all the doctor's appointments. When she had to do visits with her family, I did all the running around, all the driving. And so it was awkward. A black male, follow what I'm saying, a black male with a white girl out and about all the time, and she loves me.
Yeah.
So they insinuated at our closing meeting that it was something more than what it was.
Wow.
I threw my hands up. Now I'm done. I'm done with this.
Now,
So,
not only, not to cut you off, but not only now the young person experienced another traumatic moment by being separated again. Here now, the system that you as a taxpayer is supporting is traumatizing you.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you this. If anybody want to know what it's like being a foster child, YouTube this video called Removed. It's the most touching video that I've ever seen in my life. During the time my foster child was with me, I don't want to call her name. She was with me almost a year. Through Christmas, I got her all the stuff she wanted for Christmas. They give you one bag to pack your stuff.
I see
What does not fit in that bag?
You don't get, I know,
Left.
I lived that.
So her lava lamp that she begged for was left. The clothes that she begged for was left. Some of the shoes she begged for was left. And I had to either go, and they wouldn't even let me know where she was moved to. They moved her out abruptly and quick. They wouldn't let me know where she went to. It was sad. Thing is, we impacted her life so much. When she graduated, the first thing she did was find me on Facebook.
Wow.
And we are connected to this day.
That's awesome.
Wow. Well, listen, man, y'all, it's hitting the hour. We got to do a part 2. And Shamarko, I want you to be here from the onset.
That's cool.
Because we want to continue to advocate and raise awareness and really invoke change, because the system needs help.
Absolutely.
The system is not out there intentionally doing anything. The system needs good people to help drive it to where it needs to be. And we need to show up as good people and help drive the system to where it needs to be, right?
Absolutely.
That's accountability. And as long as we sit by as bystanders idle, we cannot show up and hold the system accountable to allow it to do what it needs to do on behalf of young people. And so in closing, again, Shamarko, I know you got to go, you can pop out. But Kevin, I know you got something you want to read.
Yes.
to young people. And we're gonna do a part 2, you guys, because we didn't even scratch the surface.
Yeah. No.
I mean, we didn't even scratch the surface, but I hope that somebody will go back and reflect and go have a conversation with somebody in your family, somebody somebody you may see along the way, and just check in on things. Ask questions, be inquisitive about where's the social service agency in your community.
Right.
Go see what it is that you can do to help and be involved as a volunteer in your community with different social services, whether public or private, because there are private agencies out there that need help, that need support. And so if you're not one that says I can adopt or I can be a foster family or be a family, then be a mentor, go take some books down, offer some gift cards, buy some clothing during the holiday season so that our young people can be supported and be taken care of. I'm an advocate for children, youth, young adults, because they need me. They need you to be advocates. They need you to be a voice, because sometimes they don't have a voice. And I'm an advocate for them having a voice. That's why Kevin is here today, because Kevin needed to voice his story. He needed to share his story, highlight his story, lift his story up. And so we don't want young people to suffer like Kevin did, right under our noses, and we don't do anything about it and take any action on it. So we're going to do a part 2. We'll spread it out when we're about to do that, and we'll dive a little bit deeper. But go ahead, Kevin, and share this story or this letter to a young person that may be in care or may have aged out of care. Share this letter with them now as we close.
And before we share this letter, I just want to say, you was talking about self-esteem. I want to talk about one thing we can revisit. You said we're going to do a part 2, but I was in a group home and I met a man who was a pastor, and he would work third shift, and I would hear him praying, so I would come out of my room and peep around and see what he was doing, and he invited me to his church. It's called Breakthrough Temple, and when I went to his church, the first message he ever preached was you were predestined. And out of thinking I was abandoned, rejected, he preached the message from the pulpit, you was predestined, which also gave me self-esteem, which let me know that I was somebody. No matter what I went through, I was predestined for a journey. And so his name was Larry Reed, and he later wanted to adopt me. And when he said that, the foster care, the group home I was in, fired him and said that he was presenting false hope to me.
Wow.
So we can table that and talk about that later. But I want to read this. If you were in the foster care system, any level of fostering, I want to talk to you. I wrote a book. It's called Change the Chain. But I wrote part 7. I wrote a special letter to foster children. And this is what it says. First, let me say I feel you. I was put in foster care at the age of 3. I went through many things during this time of my life, which I touched on in this book, in a way to empower you, the reader. I'm no stranger to hurt, pain, and rejection one goes through. I want to encourage you and tell you that there is hope and light that will shine upon you. You're great because you will make it through it and be able to speak life into others that will impact and empower their life. You are important, no matter what you have endured. There is a unique love waiting out there just for you, which has nothing to do with you coming with a check. I'm telling you, you're going to make it. Hey, look at me. I survived the worst of times. When I tell you they were the worst, they were the worst. I can honestly say it was nobody but the Lord. Wait, I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing too. If God loved me so much, why in the world would he allow all of this to happen to me? Well, I'm going to say this. God has a great plan for your life. Trust me, it may look bad right now. It may even seem unbearable at times, causing you to cry, hurt deep inside, and yearn for relief. Now take a deep breath, a deep, deep, heartfelt breath, and relax, close your eyes, and say, God has this. I promise you, it's going to be all good in the end. You're going to win. Lift your head and get some faith about you. Now expect your turnaround. Don't live chained, but live changed. K.L. Woods.
Listen, man. Hey, thank you for that. That was so inspiring. I'm sure some young person, some parent is going to watch this, and it's going to lift their spirit. And I hope that they get involved. I'm asking everyone to get involved at whatever level that you can, whatever need that you can meet in your community. I'm asking you to get involved. Whether you get involved in the school system, whether you get involved with the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, your local church, whatever it is, I'm asking that you get involved. Kevin is asking that you get involved because our community cannot change by a system. The community has to be changed by our people who are invested in the outcomes of the community. And so Joshua is always going to be an advocate for young people until the clock expires, until the time ends for me on this here old earth. I'm going to always be an advocate for young people, and that work is never going to be done. And so I'm invested in it. Kevin, I know you're invested in it. Awesome. And again, everybody that's watching, we got to do a part 2. We're going to have Shamarko back and just blend the conversation and lift the conversation up. But I want to say thank you to every foster parent, every foster family that has stood tall, every social worker that has stayed up late, that has lost sleep, that phone rang on the weekend because they were on call, that took young people in the middle of the night, that went to the emergency room and sat with young children, that drove 4 or 5 hours to find an adequate placement, that slept in the office when they shouldn't have been to make sure young people were taken care of, to the probation officers who get in the communities and put their lives at risk to do the home visits and just make sure young people have what they need, to the supervisors who approve the overtime, who approve the placements, to the community that, community members that stand tall and say, you know what, I want to open a home. I want to open a residential placement and do what's right for children. Listen, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Continue to do the right thing and continue to be an advocate. We support you all. We love you all. And listen, man, y'all have a wonderful day, man. This Coach Jay, we are so thankful that you tune in. Please share this video. Y'all make this go viral. Yeah. Make this go viral. It's something on TikTok. I guarantee you there's a little bit less enthusiastic than this right here. It's gonna go viral. Yeah. So let's see if we can make this conversation go viral. Kevin, again, man, I want to thank you for being here and being vulnerable enough to share your story, being open enough to share your story. I'm sure that it may have dug in some wounds, but thank you for standing there with a smile on your face. Absolutely. And being able to share that and from your heart and talk about your mom who is no longer here but still have love. It's evident that you felt no different about her and the situation than you did. Absolutely. She birthed you in this world. And so that's something that we can all take away from this conversation, is that we need to love more and hate less. Yes. Man, y'all take care, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. We out of here.